Most entrepreneurs spend an enormous amount of time thinking about their products, customers, competition, revenue, and expenses. But there's another force operating inside every company. It influences who stays, who leaves, how decisions are made, how customers are treated, and whether success energizes people or slowly burns them out. What's that force? Culture. Every business has one, whether the founder creates it intentionally or simply allows it to develop on its own. And while culture can sometimes sound like a vague collection of mission statements, employee perks, and motivational slogans, today's guest believes it's something far more consequential. Culture can improve people's lives, strengthen the company's performance, and even change the way we experience work itself. Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to The Reluctant Entrepreneur. My guest today is Wes Love, co-founder of Culture Stoke, a culture consulting and leadership development organization that helps companies build stronger teams, develop better leaders, and create workplaces where people and businesses can thrive together. Culture Stoke works with organizations through leadership development, workshops, team retreats, coaching, and customized culture transformation programs. Wes followed what he describes as an unconventional path. He married at 20, became a father at 22, welcomed his second daughter at 24, and then began finding his career and pursuing his education. After working in several industries, he joined an award-winning energy company where he advanced from an entry-level position to becoming a leading consultant. While working full-time and helping raise his family, he earned a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership and a master's degree in leadership and management studies. He's also the author of Culture Catalyst, the revolutionary rethinking of our workplace, a book that examines what organizational culture really is, why it matters, and how leaders can shape it intentionally to produce better experiences for people and better results for their organizations. Today, we'll talk about Wes's unconventional journey, the experiences that changed the way he thought about work, the decisions to become an entrepreneur, and the challenges of building Culture Stoke. We'll also discuss what company culture actually means, why so many leaders misunderstand it, and what entrepreneurs can do to create workplaces where both people and profits can grow. And it all begins right now. Stick around. Wes Love, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today.
Hey, thanks, Mike. And if I can pay you to just be my hype man and follow me around for the rest of my life, that'd be great. You made me sound really cool.
That's great. I interviewed someone yesterday, and he goes, "Who is that guy you were describing? I like that guy." So, well, you got some good accolades behind you. You and I have more than one thing in common. We both live in California. We discussed that off air. I was married at 20. And at 22, had my daughter. You know, we only have one child, but I married a 19-year-old. It was a 20-year-old and a 19-year-old. What could go wrong there? And that was 45 years ago. 46 years ago, coming up in August. So, yeah, that was a long time ago. But it was, children marrying children, right? And and it's funny. I don't know if you share the same experience, but we are two different people now than we were at 20 and 19. We are very fortunate that we still like each other. We grew into people we still like, but that can be pretty dicey after 46 years, particularly when you get married so young. But it worked for us. It sounds like it works for you too.
Yeah, I mean, I adore my wife, and for some reason, she still tolerates me. So it is one of the unquestioned miracles in my life. And she also, helped me raise two wonderful, amazing daughters who, of all the things I am most proud of in my life, I think being a dad is the thing that I just feel just an immense amount of fulfillment for, because like my kids are so cool and just wonderful humans that like I would, I'd want to hang out with them even if they weren't my kids, and like that was always a goal for us. So my whole family has been a rock for me in helping me become the person that I am today. So they should have their own podcast about what it's like to be married to a dumpster fire like me, who's just trying to be a better person.
Yeah, yeah. My daughter sometimes complains in jest. She goes, "Dad, how come my friends all want to hang with you guys?" Like, hey, I don't know. She's 43 now, and uh, we're part of her social circle for whatever reason. So, but we were always. I think that's one of the advantages of having kids so young is you're a kid yourself, and she's 43. I remember when I was 43. It was like yesterday, right? So, you start off being cool parents, and if you're lucky, that doesn't fade. The definition of cool still stands. But anyway, yeah, fun stuff. So you're you've described your life as somewhat unconventional. I described it as unconventional from everything I've learned about you. You married at 20, as we just talked about, became a father at 22, just like me, and had your second daughter at 24. So yeah, yeah, you got a lot done in a short period of time, and then you began finding your career and pursuing your education and doing all that. How did becoming responsible for a family, particularly so early in your life, influence the way you approach work, risk in particular, and opportunity?
Oh, that is such a fantastic question. Honestly, when I graduated high school, I was one of those people who I was like, I would rather make half as much money and work twice as hard than to ever go to school again. I hated it. And I uh, grew up believing that work was this necessary evil in your life, and you just go find some place that you can hold your nose
A
and
means to an end, right?
yeah, and when I would go into interviews and people would ask me like, well, what do you want to do in 5 years, or why are you interested in this job? And I was just looking for a paycheck, and I was like, well, we're at whatever place is going to pay me enough to provide for my family is good enough for me. And that was a really big driver. And it wasn't until I had children that I was, I just, I wanted better for them. And so I really started to kind of assess the landscape. And I was very fortunate to be part of a very people centric, forward looking company that modeled a lot of fantastic behaviors, and had a tuition reimbursement program. And so through happenstance, I just, a friend of my, a coworker of mine, friend of mine was registering for classes next to me. And I looked over and was, what are you doing? He said, I'm registering for classes. And I just got to thinking, I might as well hop into school. If they're going to pay for it, it's free money. Why? That feels like it's going to open some doors. And so we can dive into the educational journey later if we have time. But through that process, I really started to. Um, I went down the path of employee engagement. Became something that was very fascinating to me, and it's like this attitude and the motivation in which we approach our work. And so I got very invested in learning about what stands behind employee engagement. And this word culture kept coming up, and short story, very, very long. I found that, while culture is not the end all be all, it is certainly a significant part of what is going to define how your work day, week, month is going to be. And I find that if we can get organizations to think and believe the same, that they can help people become better husbands, better
Mm-hmm.
fathers, better community members, better neighbors, because they work for these organizations, not in spite of it. And so,
Right.
that really became a driving force behind it. But the catalyst for all of it was because I wanted better for my kids.
Yeah, that's great. You worked at several different industries before joining this award-winning energy company. What did those early jobs teach you about the difference between a workplace where people merely just earn a paycheck and one where they can genuinely grow? You kind of touched on it a few seconds ago,
Yeah.
but expand that.
Yeah. I found the workplaces that I went, and I've always been one to look on the bright side of things. And so I look fondly on most of my experiences, but I kind of chalk it up to like, um, devaluing my interests in pursuit of something that I deemed as more important, which I think certainly plays a part in life in general. We all make sacrifices when we need to, but what I learned from those is that like even in entry level jobs like working at Burger King in high school, I can look back now and still glean some pretty significant leadership lessons. And I think what I've learned across the gamut is that, one of the major lessons that I've learned is that people are people, like whether you work in public sector or private sector, if you work in the energy industry, in the service industry, or the merchandise industry, or the entertainment industry, content wise, things might look a little different, but contextually humans want and need the same things from their workplace. And it's very similar to any other relationship. They want to be appreciated and valued and have reciprocal respect, and want a workplace that is willing to invest in them beyond just the set of hands that they are to get work done.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the real big differentiator in workplaces that are, more human centric versus ones that are more results oriented.
Yeah, you talked about your past experience, how you gleamed something from it. My first job, well, my first real job, one that they were allowed to pay me. Before that, I worked at Straw Hat Pizza, no, Shakey's Pizza, for pizza.
Oh, I remember
That was
Shakey's.
yeah, that was my pay. They weren't allowed to pay me because I was like 14. So I'd work there for 5 or 6 hours, and I can make my own pizza. And I made an epic pizza. But when I got my first job, I couldn't start until I was 16. So on my 16th birthday, I was so excited. I worked at McDonald's for $2.30 an hour, right, as a trainee. Huge. And when I hit $3 an hour, I actually took my parents out to dinner, and they were cool enough to let me. That was probably a month's pay, right? But I felt like I was the king of the world. But at that job, that job sucked, really, if you look at it from, all sorts of points of view. However, I learned a work ethic because I think it's different today. Going to a McDonald's now, and it's a whole different story. But then you were required to stay busy. If it wasn't busy, pick up a rag and start cleaning something, sweep the floor. Because the moment one of the real crappy jobs needed to be done, like the bathrooms were all outside the building, if they'd send you to go, Conrad, go clean up the bathrooms, which was gross, or change the oil in the fryer, which is probably even grosser. And so I learned stay busy, stay productive, particularly in view of management. And then eventually I worked in retail at Montgomery Ward, if you remember that name from a Blast from the Past. And
Yeah.
I learned how to deal with people because there's nothing worse than people, the retail public. They have all these expectations. They were Karens before we knew what to call them, right? All of them, male or female. And I learned how to deal with difficult people. And then I had another job where I had just a horrible, horrible boss, toxic, screamed all the time, intimidated. My father was a very tough guy. He was tough to please. And I kind of had that part, that experience in dealing with difficult people. And I was able to maneuver my way up the ranks at this company in spite of the fact, maybe even because I had a very difficult boss and I was like the only person who could work with them. So all those things, even though they're not ideal career paths, you glean something from it, to your point.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big, I have a lot of like what I call motivational cat poster quips, just kind of locked and loaded for situations. And one of my first ones early on, I can remember saying this when I was in my early 20s, is if you're not learning something new every day, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Like I think that and for leaders, I think that's and for, well, people in general, but leaders in particular, we use this term humility a lot. And I think that there is a common misconception about what humility is it's like some kind of aw shucks attitude. And what I have found is that humility has a lot more to do with how you view other people in your life. Because I truly believe, and this is not me like peacocking as if I'm some bastion of humility, but just I firmly believe that every person in your life has something to teach you.
Yeah.
They may be teaching you something of like, well, I definitely don't want to be like that.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you close yourself off to those learning opportunities from every person and every situation, you're closing yourself off to learning.
Yeah.
And I cannot caution people enough to just be endlessly curious about yourself and the places around you, because you will learn and glean a lot regardless of how seriously you take it.
I think it was Steve Jobs at a Stanford commencement address. I could be wrong, but I think I'm attributing it to him correctly. That kind of ended the address with "Stay curious," right? And I was a very curious kid. I had this insatiable appetite to understand how everything worked technically. I was a very geeky, nerdy, technical kid. And I've said this on the show many times, so my audience is like, oh my God, here he goes again. But I would take my parents' appliances apart. I get home from school before they got home from work, so I'd have a couple hours to take apart the TV or the clock radio or the blender or hair dryer just to understand how it worked. That didn't get me in trouble. What got me in trouble was I did not have the same insatiable desire to put everything back together. I just needed to understand how it worked. And to this day, if I hear a phrase or if I hear about something that, ooh, that's new to me, and at my age, you think there's not enough. At 65, you think I've seen everything. No, now I have the ability to Google it or AI it, and I just have this deep desire to understand the why behind everything or the how behind everything, and that has helped me in my journey. It labeled me as a dorky kid when I was young, but it did help me in my journey. At the energy company, you advanced from an entry level position to becoming a leading consultant. Was there a particular person or an opportunity or a moment that helped you recognize your own leadership potential in that time?
You know, I was very reluctant to be a leader, and I had several people that I would consider, if not mentors, significant contributors to my journey there. But I think some of the more salient lessons that came out of that was, I had one my first supervisor when I was there. Was he had two things that really stuck out to me, that I just felt were exceptional modeling of leadership behavior. The first thing is they had a pretty robust internal employee development program. So they had a whole academy. It wasn't called that when I first started, but it morphed into an academy where they had just a litany of classes that you could sign up for that were internally offered. And so this supervisor said, I want you to sign up for any class that looks interesting to you. I don't care if you think it's relative to your job. And, I reserve the right to deny you. But like, I want you to be curious, seems to be thematic of the day. And so I did. I took full advantage of that. And I signed up for probably every class in the catalog, which, if it wasn't 100, it was close to it. And he only denied me one, which I still rib him about to this day when we do chat, because was it Excel and Access for engineers, and this was, coming up on 20 years ago, and he was like, "Oh, Access is going to go away. You don't need to learn that." And Access is still around to this day, but
Yeah, as is Excel. Yeah.
so he really modeled this idea of having your people be curious and be intentional about developing themselves. He gave me a lot of autonomy to be like, whatever you want to sign up for, go learn. I think it's important for your job, and we'll get it covered, which I think is great. The second thing that he did, which we'll get into, like what culture is and how you shape it, but he really developed a team culture of problem solving, because he outright refused to solve problems for you. So if you went up to his desk and you had a gripe or something, he would go, and I quote, "That sounds like a really well stated problem." And he would hand you the problem solving document that we used at the company. He'd go, let me know what you come up with, and how I can help you. And I just, at the time it was obnoxious because I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm bringing this problem to you. But what he was teaching me was to think critically and preparing me to be a leader myself, in that, like, he was modeling how leaders should be. Leaders should not be the end all be all problem solvers for everything forever, because then you don't give people opportunities to learn and grow and think critically. And so that was just from the first supervisor, and I had many mentors in there along the way. And I will tell you that I was very, to this day, I think, like, I am much more comfortable in being referred to as a helper than a leader, because I think leadership is something that is earned, and it's a choice from people who choose to follow you rather than something that's bestowed upon you. And so if people choose to follow me in whatever capacity I happen to be working in, like, I'm happy to wear the mantle of leader, but you will very rarely hear me refer to myself that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. While working full time and raising a family, you managed to go back to school and get both a bachelor's and a master's, which in itself is quite an accomplishment. And you did this while raising a family, right? And
Yeah.
working at your career. What kept you moving forward during that period? And did you ever question whether the sacrifice was worth it?
Well, if
Besides
I
every
did,
day?
I if I did, I haven't learned from it, because I am actually currently in school pursuing my doctorate. So I am I
Wow.
am
So it'll
still,
be Dr.
yeah,
Love.
I'm
Dr. Love. Well,
oh,
that sounds like a
never.
band. That sounds like a
Well,
70s yacht rock band, doesn't it?
do it absolutely does. I do really enjoy school, and I really enjoy learning. In So I what kept me going was, one, I wanted to show my daughters that you can still achieve things while taking an unconventional path. And so if they decided when they turn, well, not when they did, I will officially have no legal children in my house in October. My youngest will turn 18, and so, which is
Wow.
a whole other thing I'm processing right now.
Yeah.
um
Wait till your daughter
but
turns 40, which mine did 3 years ago. That
let's
messed with
not
my head, right? That
yeah, let's not. I mean, my oldest is going
you
to
got
turn
time.
20, so
You
i'm
got
i'm
time.
i'm still like, but firstly, I wanted to model for them that, it's never too late to
Yeah.
make a pivot or make a change. Even if you feel like your path is set, um, you, it's not. You can choose. You can make a choice to choose to do something different and invest in yourself, and take advantage of opportunities that are presented. But I also had an amazing support system. My wife, um, is just this incredible superwoman who really took on the brunt, because I was going to night school. I would wake up before everybody would be awake, and I would get home maybe for an hour, and then I would go to school until 10, and I'd come home and all the girls would be asleep. And so for 8 years, she really handled about 90% of the parenting, and did it with just such love and grace. And so there was a certain part of me that was like, I'm doing this for her too, because she's sacrificing so much. Like, I better make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
um, and so that those are really the two driving factors. That, and I'm just, you said you like to take things apart. I love to analyze people. I'm
Mhm.
not like I am an unabashed people nerd. And if I can let you in on a little secret, while I specialized in organizational and leadership and employee development, I really don't nerd out on organizational development, but I see the impacts that it has on people and how it drives their behavior. And so I picked this career because I felt it was where I could affect the most change, because workplaces are still seen to this day as a bit of a necessary evil in people's lives, and not necessarily an additive component to their life other than the paycheck. um but if workplaces were awesome, I wouldn't be in there. But I really am endlessly fascinated by people and what
Yeah.
makes them tick. So
My mother-in-law, God rest her soul, from Scotland, used a set of phrase, and one of the words in the phrase has taken on other meanings. But when she would run into someone who was odd, she would say, "There's nothing," in her strong Scottish accent. "There's nothing queerer than folk," and meaning just strange. And my wife and I say that all the time. My wife's Scottish as well, and we say that all the time when we are at the grocery store and run into someone that's just a little odd. And there's nothing queerer than folk, there's no end to that. Part of your answer kind of brings me into this question. You experienced firsthand what a strong company culture could do for both employees and business. You've talked about that. When did you begin thinking that helping other organizations build that kind of culture might become more than in just a casual interest and actually become your life's work? When did that light bulb or spark go off?
It started at that other company. So they had, what I would consider internal consultants, on staff whose job it was to help leaders. And it was specifically around lean continuous improvement. And so, which morphed into more of the leadership development stuff, but that's really where I cut my teeth in this crazy work world. And if you're asking when did I start to think like, oh, maybe I could become a consultant, I will be totally honest, and I will probably get
You're going to get some slack for this, right?
I'm probably going to get some flack for this, but I was very ambivalent on becoming a consultant because there are a lot of them that are out there and consultancy in general has a bit of a reputation that unfortunately
those that can do, those that can't consult, that type of thing. I have an expression about a consultant, and it sounds like a dig, but I don't think it's a dig. I think it's more of a dig on their customer, their client. A consultant is someone you hire to tell you what time it is. And the moment they're on the clock, they ask if they can borrow your watch. In other words, the answers are right there. Everything they need to learn is right in front of them. They just can't see the forest from the trees, right? And
1,000%.
Yeah. So you're borrowing people's watches.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this firsthand as an internal consultant, and I'm not like a overly religious person, but there's the saying of it's hard to be a prophet in your own town.
Yes.
And so I think this is one of the value. This is part of the value that consultants bring is that it's when people hear your voice as a leader every day, or as a boss every day, or even as an individual contributor every day. It can start to sound a lot like noise. And it became a fun little game with one of my mentors who is a consultant, who encouraged me and helped me get over some of my hangups about being a consultant, where I would say something for a month as this internal consultant trying to get people to move. And then he would come in and we'd have a little pre-meeting and I'd be like, hey, I need you to can you put this out there on Main Street as an idea? And he'd go, okay. And it was like he'd put it out on Main Street, and everybody in the room like light bulb. Oh, first I've ever heard
Jedi
of
mind
this.
trick. These aren't the droids you're looking for, right?
Exactly.
He had the force within.
Yeah, and I think that that is some of the value, and I'm pretty open with my clients about that. Is like, hey, part of the thing you bring me in for is like, I don't come in with new, fresh, or different answers. I'm really here to help you articulate the expertise that you already have within. I want to teach you how to read your own watch and not need me. That has always been my strategy for consulting, is like, I'm here to work myself out of a job.
Yeah.
Like I love when I have people go, we love you and you've helped us a lot, but we think we got it. That's a win for me.
Yeah. I think a lot of consultants kind of go to the same school chiropractors go to. In other words, it's constant adjustments. And you're right. I mean, once you do your job, that's my job is over, right? And they can always come back for a refill or a touch up. But so leaving an established career, you had quite an established career, particularly at the energy company, and you were moving up through the ranks. What were your greatest concerns at that time? And was there any kind of reluctant component when you decided to start your own business? And did you ever wonder, did I make the right decision? Was there ever any second guessing?
So you know, gleaning, what I can from every situation, leaving that company was really tough because they were very good to me and my family. But what I found, they brought in a new CEO, and the CEO was made decisions as CEOs do. And I what it spoke to me is about this idea of fit and culture fit, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point in time. But I really sat back and looked at the landscape and the trajectory of where the company was going, and I started to feel like, this is not the place for me anymore. And the lesson that I learned from that is that everybody was better because I made that decision. Because one of the more heartbreaking things that I hear are people that just have this kind of tacit acceptance of the status quo,
Yeah.
and that it's like, just be they. And I went and I left that organization and joined a different one and took a pretty substantial pay cut to do so. And as I was leaving, the organization did what most organizations do when a employee that they value tried to leave. What do you think they tried to do?
Pay you more money,
Yep. I mean, it was
which
multiple
makes the
conversations
decision
of like,
even worse, even harder, right?
I, I was like, and I kept having to tell them there was about 3 or 4 sit down conversations with kind of progressively, you know, uh, up the hierarchy. And I was like, listen, fam, if this was a money decision, I wouldn't be leaving. I'm making a
Right.
terrible economic decision right now, but
Yeah.
money is only a part of what drives me. And so, flash forward to Culture Stoke, or the company that my business partner and I co-founded, who is a friend from high school, Marty
Is that
Imes,
Marty
fantastic
Imes? Yeah.
human,
Yeah.
amazing human being. We were old high school buddies, and our paths kind of diverted, and then we, met up and kind of found that we had the same interests. And I was very reluctant to be a consultant for a lot of reasons. One, because I have feelings about consultants in general, and didn't necessarily want to be lumped in like that, but got over that pretty quickly because I'm like, I'll just do it differently.
Right. You'll be a
Um,
different type of
and
consultant. Unfortunately, you still got the same label. I mean, there's no other
yeah,
mentor, Sherpa. I mean, all those have, they've already established meanings. So yeah, we need a new
thought
word.
leader is another one. It's
Yeah.
like I'm not but I would say that the biggest struggle for me is like the internal one, the feeling of imposter syndrome. When I was
Oh
writing the
yeah.
book, my editors would be like, well, why should people want to listen to you? And it would frustrate them because I'd be like, I don't think they should, what do I know? And so I do wrestle with this. I wrestled, because I think I found a place that I can at least be comfortable with it. I wrestled with this idea of like, what do I know? Why should anybody listen to me? I'm a dumpster fire that's just trying to figure it out. I wake up every day trying to, like, am I doing the right thing? You asked if I question. I'm like, yeah, all the time. Am
All
I
the time.
doing the
Yeah.
right thing? Am I on the right path? And I think that's a normal part of the process. And I also have come to realize that the vast majority of my work, people aren't looking for solutions. They're looking for a feeling of not being alone in their problems, and they can certainly use me for my the expertise that I do have. I don't typically use that word, but they can use me for the knowledge and people that I have. But the vast majority of folks are just looking for somebody to come alongside them
Yeah.
and work with it. And that has really helped me get past this idea of reluctant consultant and more into being just a human that's along for the ride with you.
I think one thing that most civilians, when I say civilians, I mean people who are not entrepreneurs, smart people who
Sure.
stay at their jobs and let someone else worry about how to sign the front of the check, just sign the back of the check.
Absolutely.
I think one thing most people don't realize is entrepreneurship can be lonely. And, that's surprising. And I hate to say that because I don't want to come off sounding like some wuss or something, but it is lonely. And I've said that to a couple of friends, and of course they're like, "How can it be lonely? You have 50 people working for you. You know, you're always surrounded by people. There's lines at your office door. You know, and like
Yeah,
it's different. It's hard to describe, but it can be lonely, and that's why I can identify with you wanting to work with someone and have someone to bounce ideas off of that you don't. You pay them if it's a consultant, you pay them, but it's not like an employee employer relationship, right? Where
totally.
sometimes it's the emperor's new clothes. Sometimes the employees will tell you what you want to hear rather than
Mhm.
what you need to hear, because who wants to do that,
Totally.
right? So let's talk about Culture Stoke. You and Marty started Culture Stoke, Marty Imes. What made the two of you compatible as business partners, and how have you learned to navigate occasional disagreements or different working styles or shared responsibility? That's always it's way more complicated. I started my company with a business partner. Fortunately, I was majority shareholder, and I thought he was a great business partner, and I hired him, or I invited him to come into the company because of my imposter syndrome. I started
Mhm.
freaking out when it actually push came to shove. I'm like, I don't think I can do this on my own. And I was 32 years old when I started my company, and I didn't think I was old enough or smart enough or wise enough or experienced enough. And this guy had gray hair. I hired him because he had gray hair, and I knew him. But I
Yeah.
primarily hired him because he looked the part, right? I can be
Right.
the guy doing
Right.
all the work, creating all the tech that we sell. He could be the guy that looks like he's doing that. He was the Wizard of Oz, you know, behind the curtain. And and then I realized he was a terrible business partner. We had totally different plans. And, you know, in my experience, he was dumb as an ox. But he didn't look dumb as an ox. He looked sharp and sage and, you know, trustworthy. He was the nicest guy. But I realized, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And I had to buy him out. But so how do you work through all those potential pitfalls and take someone you really like that you've known for a while that you trust to go into a partnership together with
Yeah.
and still handle those potential bumps in the road?
It's a really good question, and I would say like one of my hypotheses about the workplace is that we tend to overcomplicate it a lot. That
Mm-hmm.
like people, again, going back to people are just people. And so, first off, Marty and I have a blast when we're hanging out. So we just
Do you and
we
Marty do that
genuinely
podcast together? Is that I saw you have a
we
podcast or had a
did,
podcast? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we did,
There's good chemistry. There was three of you in the room. The one I
yeah.
saw. Was one a guest, or all three of you do this show, or did that show?
So Richard was a part of Culture Soak for a bit, and he was our videographer and podcast host, and it was just kind of an idea we were experimenting with, and it was a lot of fun. And then life happened, uh, and now we're not anymore.
Yeah,
But
but I can see
we
the
had an
chemistry
amazing.
between you and Marty in the room as you engaged with each other and kind of ribbed each other a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and I think that's the part, like, that's an important component is like, you got to have some fun while you're doing it. Like we do, of all the companies I've worked for and with, I would say we live tight to our values, and fun is one of those. Like we if we're not having a good time doing something, we sit down and have real talks about is the juice worth the squeeze about this, which kind of leads me to my next part. Like I think you need to genuinely have some shared values and like the person that you're in a business relationship with. You have to care about the other human too, and I think you have to care for everybody. You don't have to necessarily like everybody. And so Marty and
yeah,
I are in a really good situation where we like each other just as humans, but we care about one another.
right. You got both. You
And
got both going for you.
we got both going. And then we also see the world very similarly. We see workplace as a vector for making people's lives better. We both believe, people first is another one of our values. And so we really do approach things fairly similarly about, well, when we go in and we start to look at organizational issues and hear the problems, we don't immediately go to like process or tools. We go to like the people and culture stuff, and that works really well for us. But I would say the secret, not secret, the thing that we've been, or the lesson we've been learning recently, is that it's like, not only is it okay to see things differently, like we don't need to be in lockstep all the time, but it actually makes us better because it hones our own skills, it hones our own craft, and we're able to practice things in a relatively safe environment, like setting good boundaries and having hard conversations. And I think it's a good practice for consultants to get into, because it helps you avoid the those who can't do teach
Yeah.
moniker, because it's
Right.
like we really got to drink our own champagne, otherwise it's not going to work and it's going to be miserable for both of us. And so we're very committed to um, getting our respective messages out there, because like, while we're aligned, I think we have some nuancy differences, and it's okay, and we leave space for both,
Yeah.
which I think is another big part of it.
The word culture is used so frequently today that it can mean almost anything. When you walk into an organization, how do you determine what real culture is, rather than just what the leadership claims it is?
That is a fantastic question. So I created a model, which is one of the salient points of the book, to help people get some shared common language about what culture is. And because I have anecdotally asked this question to hundreds of people during my culture catalyst workshops, of like, if I was to ask you to define culture, how many of you in this room would feel 100% confident in your answer? And of the hundreds of people that at this point that I have asked that question to, I have had two people very confidently raise their hand. And I asked them to share, and one person promptly put their hand down. And the other person gave me what was a very textbooky answer. It was a right answer, but it was a very, like, I could kind of tell, like, oh, you Googled this,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
which is fine. Again, it's not like a gotcha question, but it's more to represent that it's a term that we use a lot, but very few people genuinely know what it means. Because I'll reframe the question and say, well, how many of you would feel kind of sort of okay with your answer? Like, maybe you can't get me to the right house, but you can get me to the neighborhood. And there's a good chunk of people that will very ambivalently put their hand up and kind of give me like, kind of, which I find to be funny body language for a question that asks, like, what would you feel like somewhat confident? And they somewhat confidently raise their
Yeah.
hand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Uh, and then I'll reframe it again and say, how many of you have no idea? Like, heard the word, probably could spell it, but have no idea what culture is. And those people very confidently put their hand up. And,
Me.
it's a
Me. Me.
pretty
Yeah.
pretty noticeable distribution. Bell curve is the middle group. Um, and so I really came to find that it is one of those words, and I liken it in the book to wind. If I was to ask you to define the wind, you would probably say, well, it's like air that I can feel. And but defining the wind would be very difficult. However, when it's working for
Right.
you, and
Right.
when it's not. And that's where a lot of organizations leave culture, is like, I can get a sense that something is not right. But what I created is admittedly a gross oversimplification of culture, but it is one that really allows people to get their hands on it. Making it tangible, and really at the end of the day, you distill it down to its base level. Culture is just the determiner of acceptable and unacceptable behavior in the workplace.
Yeah.
When people step on a cultural barrier or boundary, and everybody in the room goes,
Yeah.
that's not how we do things around here,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so,
Cross the
like,
line.
you know
Yes.
when you ask, like, how do I suss out like what the culture is versus what they say it is or what they wish it would be, I look specifically at the behavior,
Yeah.
like, not not what's written on the wall, not what you hope it would be someday, but like, what am I actually seeing? Behavior is defined as an observable act. What can I see? What can I hear? And that's what I will lean on whenever I'm talking about culture with folks. Like, I get that you don't want people to disrespect one another, but respect is not a behavior.
Right.
Respect is an assessment of.
Here's a kind of a bizarre analogy along that same line. Back in the 70s, a lot of smaller communities, particularly in the South, started fighting against pornography and indecency. I don't even think they used the word pornography in public then,
Probably not.
but it was an indecency thing. And a state legislator or a congressman or something said, when he was asked by the press or by someone, what is indecency? He goes, you know it when you see it. He- and 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 he was right in that context. And what was indecent in Mississippi was totally okay in California, right? So, and I think your definition of culture is similar in that you kind of know it when you see it. I spent a lot of years visiting all my customers, not all my customers, but many of my customers. I travel around the world now, and I go into companies, and I can pick up a culture vibe totally. And there may be different types of culture, but it is like pornography. Culture is like pornography. In this example, yeah, this is going to be an outtake. No, but it's you know it when you see it that there's a definite
Yeah.
culture here, and I've seen positive cultures, and I've seen toxic cultures, and I think a lot of
Mhm.
people correlate the word culture to something good. It could be a very negative culture, a toxic culture, a punitive culture, a blaming culture,
Yeah.
all those types of things. And it could be a wonderful culture. But I think what culture can include things, but those things are not mutually exclusive. I don't think that companies that serve soft drinks and beer in the lunchroom, companies like Google, at least back in the day, that had pool tables and all sorts of picnic areas and movie theaters and all that, maybe a massage studio. And I had a friend who was a baker for Facebook. She was part
Hmm.
of their baking team to make cakes and cookies and whatever. Some people might call that culture, which it might be part of the culture, but I think that that's not necessarily culture. That's
Yeah.
culinary.
Yeah.
but
Well, I mean, it can be a representation of
of
parts
it.
of your culture.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think a lot of
I
business
think
owners
that
were like, "We
the
have culture. Look at our restaurant in here. Look at the fact that we give maternity leave and paternity leave and dog leave and whatever."
sure.
They might mistake that as culture, and
Mhm.
it's not. It's a gimmick, or it
Yeah.
could be
Well, it's
part
the
of it.
this for sure, and that's like this the superficial nature. And so I'm very intentional about that definition of the determiner of acceptable and unacceptable behavior because, and this is a thing that differentiates my approach from others, is I don't advocate for like a particular type of culture. I advocate for the type of culture that you as the leader want to see or build. And so I'm very I might have opinions about what's good or bad or toxic or otherwise, but really your culture is going to be shaped by what you're willing to hold people accountable for and what you're willing to tolerate and what you celebrate. And so if part of your culture is pizza parties, like that can be a physical representation, but the behavior at the pizza party could be totally different. You could walk in and nobody's talking to her, or people walk in, grab their slices of pizza and leave,
Yeah,
versus people that walk in, grab their slice of pizza and talk and celebrate with one another. Those are two different cultures. The pizza
sure.
party is just a thing that's happening at the moment. The culture is how are people showing up when you're doing those activities, whether it's the work activities or the extracurricular activities. And so like when you think about culture, I am very I try to help leaders build the cultures that they want versus what they read in a book and hear the studies and say that, because like you can look and objectively say that there are certain types of cultures where people are much more productive. But if you don't care about that stuff as a leader, you're never going to get that established. And so like, I'm just more about being open and transparent with what do you want? And so don't be the organization that talks about work-life balance in your recruiting,
Right.
materials and in your hiring. And then after week one, you're like, we're going to need you to come in on Saturdays. And hey, you didn't answer your email at 8 p.m. Like, don't pretend to be something that you're not, because that's where people start to get very suspect and you start to lose
Yeah.
trust.
It's not a fake it
And
till you
you
make it kind of thing.
no.
Yeah.
And just because you say a thing, again, in any relationship you've ever been in, you have probably encountered people that will say one thing but do something totally different. And I
Yeah.
want, like, how, do you trust those people?
I don't. No. No.
No, that's a human thing.
Yeah.
That is a universal people thing, that if somebody says they are something but show us that they're not,
Yeah.
we will innately distrust them.
Yes, because now we don't trust anything they say. We're,
Exactly.
there's two measurements of time. There's time and there's podcast time. And podcast time
Right.
is like 2 times the speed of real time. So we're starting to run out of times, but I
Okay.
do want to ask a couple of questions more.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about your book, Culture Catalyst. Where'd that come from?
So I am. This is going to get me in trouble with my publishers, because I wrote a book because I wanted to write a book, not sell a book. And so I
I did the same
typically
thing.
don't.
I give more
I
away than
don't.
I sell.
Me too. I
Yeah.
like. I'm very ambivalent. I wrote a book because I had a bucket list item that I wanted to write a book. And it could have been a fantasy novel. It could have, but this book really did just come to me, and I had it noodling in my brain for a long time. Started writing it during COVID, and was like, I'm gonna do 500 words a day, and, and then I got 3 chapters in, and then I put it away for 4 years. But then when I got with this publishing company, I think I had the rough draft done in a month and a half, and published within a year. And it really is like, they asked me, who are you writing this for? And I'm like, everyone. They're like, that's not a great way to write a book. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not looking to sell a book, but I really wanted
And
to
they
write this
published you
book.
anyway.
I really wanted to write this book because I wanted to empower any person that is working in a workplace where something feels off. You mentioned the vibes, like that's culture is going to be the vibes of the workplace, and if something feels off, I wanted to give them some language and a little bit of a runway about things that they could do to shape it. And so I wrote it geared towards leaders, but like every single idea and tool and premise that is in that book can be for literally any person at any level of the organization to just at their team be like, does this feel good to you all? Do you like coming to work because I don't feel very great about this. And then it's like, if other people on the team are like, yeah, I feel that too, they can work together to change it. But if everybody else on the team goes, not really, no, I'm happy as a clam, it's a good data point for that person. Like, maybe this is a place where I don't fit. And so
Yeah.
that's really where the book came from.
Yeah. When I wrote my book, I did not write my book with any intent to publish. I
Mhm.
started speaking at universities on the subject of entrepreneurship, mostly to engineering students. I've been doing that
Nice.
now for about 8 or 9 years at Dartmouth College and a few others, and which is a big irony, Wes, because I'm a college dropout, and here I am now standing at a lectern. It's like talk about imposter syndrome. But as I started recounting some of the anecdotes from my journey, I started remembering more and more and more. So I started just writing in a notebook, like make sure to tell this story and this story, and this one led to that. Next thing you know, I have a rough draft. And a friend of mine read it
Nice.
and he said, "You got to turn this into a book." And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. But when I found writing the book was exceptionally cathartic for me because
Hmm.
I didn't realize in that moment, 4 or 5 years ago when I started writing the book, that everything was intentional. Everything that seemed random was not random. They were all connected. And in the moment, you can't see that. It's like it
No.
being in a hedge maze. You can only see up to the next turn. You can't see beyond the turn. And looking back, I'm like, oh my God, it was a huge effort in self discovery because I'm like, this makes sense. This was a destiny thing. And I was going to end up here whether I wanted to or not because, you know, the I like to refer to the business gods, and I mean that metaphorically. The business gods would burn a bridge if they had to, so I couldn't cross it. They would slam a door, open another one. And they all seemed like just random sets of events, but they were all part of this greater plan. And I was a player in it. I was like an actor shooting a movie where I would get one page of the script a day. I had no idea where it
Yeah,
was going. And now that you know, the movie's almost over, now I have the majority of the script and I say, oh, there was a plot. And I just didn't
totally.
know, right? Last question. How did you define success early in your career and how do you define it now?
I think, how did I define success early in my career? Very early on was, can I afford to pay my bills and support my
Right.
family? That was like kind of the litmus test, and whether or not I felt good about the work that I did was not even a consideration. It was
Right.
just like whoever could pay me the most. You have my employee until and I find something better, or until I deem that what you're paying me is not worth what I'm doing. Which is not is a real it's not a great place to live. If we
No.
define our whole success on our checking account and our paycheck, like there's a famous quote from Rockefeller. He was, the Elon Musk of his time, the
Nelson
richest man
Rockefeller,
on the
right?
planet. Yeah. And he was asked by a reporter, how much money is enough money? And his response, I think, was really telling. His response was just a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that I think that is a cautionary tale that money will never be fulfilling for you. And thankfully, my mom, who is another hero of mine, for better or for worse, kind of taught me that money is just a tool and nothing to lose sleep over. And so, as long as you can provide for your family, like, leave out all the rest. Now, how I define success is, how did I show up in a way that is conducive to me, that is representative? Did I show up as my best self, whether it's because I teach it at a college, like if it's in front of my students, if it's in front of a client, if it's in front of my family, if I'm at the gym. I coach kickboxing. If I'm kickboxing at the gym, you know, did I represent like the human being that I want to be, and a person that's aligned with my values? And then whatever the outcomes of that are just that. They're just outcomes. Success is like, did I show up the way that I wanted to? And did
Yeah.
I articulate and present the way that I wanted to? And I found that to be a lot. I have always found that if you predicate your success on outcomes that are predicated on the behaviors or reactions of other people, you're really leaving yourself a lot of room to be disappointed, because people are messy and unpredictable. But if you base your outcome, or you base your success solely on my actions and my behaviors and how I showed up, like, you can win a lot more often,
Yeah.
even if the overall success of the effort wasn't, in the traditional sense, successful.
Oh, that's great. To my audience who'd like to get more information on Culture Stoke and the book, which I'm showing on the screen right now, my listening audience is going, what book? I can't see anything. I'm driving a car, but there's a picture of the book cover. It's available on Amazon. And I have not had the opportunity to read it, but I think I will. I the whole idea of culture just excites me, and we consider our company kind of a culture first company that we morphed into. We didn't start that way, it was everything but.
Sure.
But I think I'll be anxious to read that. But to my audience who would like to get more information on Wes's consultancy, I know he doesn't like that word which makes me like Wes because he doesn't like that word. But anyway, if you want to get more information on Culture Stoke, the URLs will be right down here. If you're watching this on YouTube, right below me, click see more. That information will be there, as will a link to Amazon for the book. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, of course, you know what to do. Just go to the podcast app, look at the show notes, and that information will be there. Wes Love, good to meet you, and thanks for the generosity of your time. I've taken a good portion of your day, and I appreciate you sharing your journey and sharing your sage advice with me and my audience.
Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I am happy to send you a copy of the book. Please don't buy it. I have plenty, and if you are an Audible, like if you like audiobooks, I have coupon codes for you too. So
you know what? I have got the exact same thing for you. This will be we'll be members of the Mutual Admiration Society. Do you prefer audio or a book?
I am much more, just for time's sake, an audiobook person.
I'll send you the same coupon codes Amazon or Audible sends to me. I'll send you one of those. You send me yours, and I'll listen to your book. You listen to mine, and we'll go from there. Mine is not a how-to book. It's kind of more of a how-not-to book. Just don't do anything I did in the first several chapters, and you might be successful sooner. Wes Love, thanks again for being my guest, and continued success to you and your girls and your family. I love the approach you have. I love how they are the inspiration for you doing what you do. That's amazing. So thanks again for being the guest and being my guest. And again, I hope our paths cross again.
Me too. Anytime.
Okay, here are some final thoughts. Culture is sometimes dismissed as something vague, soft, or secondary to the serious work of running the business. But as Wes reminds us, culture isn't separate from the business. It influences how people communicate, how leaders make decisions, how employees treat customers, and how an organization responds when circumstances become difficult. A culture doesn't become intentional simply because a company has written down its values. It becomes intentional when those values are reflected in hiring, compensation, leadership behavior, accountability, and the countless decisions people make when the founder isn't in the room. For entrepreneurs, the lesson is that we aren't only building companies, we're creating environments in which people will spend a significant portion of their lives. Revenue, growth, and profit matter. Of course they do. But so does the human experience behind those results. The question isn't whether your company has culture, it already does. The real question is whether you're consciously creating it or merely discovering what it has become. Now, that is a wrap. Thanks for being part of our Reluctant Entrepreneur family. We've been very busy recording future episodes with amazing guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, we'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com, where you can apply or recommend a guest or just learn more about the show. And don't forget to check out my newest series, Reluctant Lessons When Businesses Go Wrong. On this series, we dig into high-profile business failures and the story behind it all. We've already profiled several companies with many more on the way. You know, as it turns out, there's no shortage. Check out Reluctant Lessons right here on this channel. And if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. And to everyone listening or watching, if you find yourself stepping into entrepreneurship, whether that's by choice or by circumstance, remember this. Sometimes the path we never planned becomes the journey we were meant to take. That's it for me. I'm out of time. Thanks so much for being here. I truly appreciate you. I'll see you again soon.